Hello and welcome to episode 74 of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. My name is Rob Woods and this is the show for anyone who works in fundraising and who wants ideas and maybe a little dose of inspiration to help you raise more money and enjoy your job, especially during the pandemic. And today we're looking at culture and relationship building within your charity and how the effort you put in here helps you grow fundraising income. And I'm really pleased to share a second interview with the brilliant Mel Bushell, who is Director of Development at the Portsmouth Grammar School. You may have heard episode 71, in which Mel explains how her school created one of the most successful giving days that a UK school has ever achieved. In fact, this year the school raised a sum more than 15 times greater than it did 5 years ago, and this growth has enabled it to dramatically increase its bursary provision. So today we're looking at various things you can do to improve your organisation's ability to raise funds, particularly to do with building a culture that cares about fundraising. As before, Mel shares plenty of stories and examples to go with her advice. So whether you work in school or higher education fundraising, or for any other kind of charitable organisation, I hope you'll find it a really interesting listen. Melanie Bushell, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
So a while ago, you were very kind and made time to tell us all about some lessons learned from your Giving Day success for Portsmouth Grammar School. And today I wanted to talk more about culture and how important that is in achieving fundraising success. Just so the listener can tune into the context of this conversation, remind us, what's your job title and what's the name of the organisation you work for?
So I'm Development Director at the Portsmouth Grammar School and I've been there about 8 years.
Thank you, Mel. And I know last time we spoke very specifically about a particular campaign, your Giving Day, but even before that Giving Day, I had a strong sense that the culture at your school now is much more interested in bursaries and the importance and value of fundraising generally. And I sense that, you've worked hard on things that will help that culture. In terms of results, broadly, how are your fundraising results now or last year compared to 8 years ago when you started?
When I started, there wasn't lots of fundraising going on at all, but by the time we got fundraising, it was about 5 years ago. And even prior to the Giving Day, in the last year, we had raised 5 times more than we raised in the first year that we were doing fundraising.
And I think it's also true that the best thing about that is it translates into more children receiving bursaries and able to attend your wonderful school than would have happened 5 years ago.
That's exactly right. That's what really matters, is the impact you can have with the gifts that you're given. And this year, because of the Giving Day and because of another extremely generous gift that we've had, we've gone way, way, way above 5 times what we were kind of 15 times what we raised in the first year. So the number of bursaries that we're able to offer has just kind of gone through the roof, really. But so the need has also increased, of course, particularly since COVID. So
Yeah, I understand. And if we're now to talk less about specific tactics in any given fundraising letter or campaign and more about this sort of more subtle but crucial stuff of people buying into what development is all about, what do you think is a key theme that the listener should be aware of?
One of the first things that I think has made a very big difference, and particularly the last sort of 2 or 3 years. When I arrived at the school knew they wanted to raise money for bursaries, but it was kind of like, well, because it's the right thing to do, really. And I spent a lot of time trying to get the governors and leadership to sign up to really think about the strategy. And I said, it's really important that the fundraising that we do is actually really about the organisation we want to be. So that took quite a lot of work, I'll be honest, and it needed me having a head who was on side for it, and then between us working with the governors to the point where we came up with a strategy that said, we want to double in the number of bursaries that we can offer, and it'll probably take a generation to do it, but we want to get to a point where 1 in 4 pupils is receiving some kind of fee assistance, so it brings it much closer to what the school used to be like when it was a traditional grammar school that had government funding and all that kind of stuff. So again, it's kind of getting back to the roots, if you like. So having a clear vision, clear direction, even if we don't know the exact timescale or how long it'll take us to get there, saying we want to be the kind of school where a quarter of the pupils are there, even though their families wouldn't be able to afford the full fees.
Fantastic. And I mean, this is interesting, isn't it, this area, because there's some things that a fundraiser or development professional has no control of whatsoever. And there are some things that are completely within their control. And there's some things that they can influence somewhat if they go about doing certain things. And, if out there someone's in a university or a school and the leadership really is not very interested at all, then I think that just is extremely tough. And there's not loads we can do to create a big change on that because we are not the leader. But that said, I think there's lots of fundraisers out there where they might have some senior colleagues who don't totally get it, but there may be some things that they could do to influence and better make a case and gradually build relationships and help some other colleagues see things differently and in a more donor-friendly way, more fundraising-friendly way. And probably, I hope a lot of today's conversation can help us if we're in that boat. That said, is there anything you've learned over the years to do with building that interest, not just across, but also up with leadership of a school?
Yes, I mean, sometimes there might be somebody around who isn't directly the person that you most need to influence, but they might have a bit more of an in than you have. So this is something that has happened a bit actually with our governing body. I was able to identify relatively early on which governors were more interested or had a little bit more understanding of development. So it was a matter of spending some time with them and then kind of between you then doing it almost like a pincer movement on the next one. So like taking on one person at a time. And just, obviously that sounds a lot more kind of military than it was. But finding your ally, finding your first ally and taking it from there really, and then working out, okay, who's the next kind of softest towards what you're trying to do and working on it like that. So yeah, it's a lot about personal relationships, and it takes time to gain someone's respect. So you just have to go through that process, and then once you've got it, then you can start making more of an impact.
Yes, Mel. And I remember in a previous conversation, you said just how fortunate you feel that your head of your school really does understand development and fundraising.
Yes, I do feel very fortunate. She's a relatively new head, and I think it is something that's kind of happening more with people who are in their first headships. People are realising the importance of having an interest in development, and it's made, we've made great strides forward over the last sort of 3 years. And in terms of strategy and making sure that the school strategy and the fundraising strategy are all of a piece, and also in terms of getting the governing body sometimes to think more strategically. So that's something I had been trying to do without success, but obviously the head of the school has a lot better chance of doing that. So it's been brilliant, really, and we've taken lots of steps forward, and we've got a plan for things going ahead and so on. So I'm very grateful that I have a head who really gets it, and my heart really goes out to some of the people I know in other schools who aren't so blessed. But going on from that, personal relationships and how you operate with the people in your school is really, really key, because you can never do everything all on your own as a development team. It always works best as a team effort. And one of the first people that I kind of really felt the benefit of getting on side with development was our school archivist, because I thought, we're inviting back alumni who will have, they'll have been here years ago, and how do I make this, which to them could look a very different school now. It's gone co-ed, got new facilities and all that kind of stuff. How do we kind of make them connect with it? And he's brilliant, the archivist. He's absolutely brilliant. So every time we've got someone coming in, I get in touch with him a couple of weeks in advance and say, can you see what you can find on Mr. X? I think he was at school on these years because he's coming in on this day. And John is the archivist. And he's always ridiculously modest. And he always says, don't promise them anything, which I never do anyway. And, I haven't found very much. And then, I come to this table laden with photographs. And But occasionally there won't be very much. But even if all we've got is their handwritten admissions card from 1965 with like their home address at that time written in fountain pen, when someone is presented with that, of course they're not remotely thinking that their old school has still got stuff like that. And it has a massive, massive impact on people. And that's one of the things about being in the school. People talking about their school days is a very personal and emotional thing. So it's a massive privilege to be a part of it. But the work that John does really assists me in that. And we had this one example. We had this guy coming in who left the school in 1968 and had never been back since. And he was, in terms of my kind of dream prospects, he's absolutely at the very top. He came to the school when it was a traditional grammar school. His place was for free. He did really well. He went on to Oxford and he's done amazingly well in the city. So I knew that in terms of capacity, he could really make a difference for our pupils. But I'd never met him before and he was coming in. So I got in touch with John, and it was one of those occasions where he found a million things. And one of the things, there was things like the school magazine, and the donor had been the editor of the magazine one year. And he'd also done a lot of cross-country running. And in the archive, we still had, from the 1960s, we had like exercise books with handwritten records of all the races that were taking place. And so I had all that stuff in my office. And when the donor came in, and it just took him right back. And it was just brilliant fun. I mean, we both really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing his reaction to stuff. Like I said, he'd totally forgotten that he had edited the school magazine. He had totally forgotten that he was a prefect. And well, it was just fantastic. And so we went from literally his first visit back to the school in over 50 years to within a couple of weeks, him making this commitment to a 5-year ongoing gift, which was actually going to be worth £300,000 and was going to fund 4 pupils, which was just amazing.
Hi, it's Rob, and I just want to jump in really quickly to let you know about our Major Gifts Mastery Programme, which is our flagship training programme and is a combination of masterclasses and one-to-one coaching to help fundraising professionals from education and other charities to grow their confidence and their income. To give you a sense of the difference it makes, here's what one fundraiser, Sarah Davies, who's an experienced higher education fundraiser, said about how it helped her.
I've just finished Rob Wood's Major Gift Mastery programme and it's been amazing. The last 6 months of doing this course, I've had the most successful time in my job to date. I've had 3 or 4 major breakthroughs, my confidence has increased, and it's no coincidence. I know this course has helped massively. Also, my colleague who works with me has been doing this course as well, and she's had the best 6 months in her career as well. Again, major breakthroughs, and I really encourage you, if you can find the budget within your organisation, to apply for this.
If you'd like to find out more, go to brightspotfundraising.co.uk/services and then click on Major Gifts Mastery Programme. For now, let's get back to the interview, as I asked Mel to explain a bit more about how she builds relationships with her colleagues at the school. Whenever I have these conversations with you, Mel, I get a strong sense that your school's been achieving some fabulous fundraising results, but in none of those stories was it just you on your own. I mean, of course, it's obvious, isn't it? One just has to have positive relationships with one's colleagues if one's able to build a great experience for our supporters. And it seems you pay attention to detail and you work harder than most fundraisers I know at building up those relationships with your colleagues in the school. And of course, the truth is we need relationships with all kinds of people in the context of a school: pupils, parents, archivists, leadership, teachers. In terms of working relationships with teachers, is there anything you've learned, anything you try especially hard to do? Yeah,
it's really interesting working with teachers because I'd never worked in a school before, and it's going to sound really obvious, but schools operate very much on a term time basis. So teachers are basically either working at 100 miles an hour during term, or they're not there during the holidays, where most people like me will still be working during the holidays. So really bearing that in mind whenever you are trying to get a favour from a teacher, I think is really, really important. So, and looking at every way that you can to make it easier for them to do what you're asking them to do. Something else we did, we had again a major prospect we brought in, and he's one of these people who kind of set up an internet business in his bedroom when he was 16 and made a fortune, and he's diversified massively. And there were quite a few things in the sort of school's plans for the next few years that we thought he might be interested in. So he managed to get half a day in his diary and put together a programme where he was going to see the sixth formers who are doing the entrepreneurship programme, look at our plans for the preschool. His children joined when they were that kind of age, and he's in tech, so we had some tech stuff. So first of all, we had the ideas as the kinds of things that we want him to do, but obviously we needed the teachers who were doing those things to put on their best face for the day and cope with having me and a donor come wandering into their classroom in the middle of the day. And actually, I from the work I did around that, I've got some real allies in different parts of the school that I wouldn't have had before. And just, explaining why we think this donor will be interested in what they're doing, what they really want to achieve in their department, and how this donor might be able to help that is obviously a really key part of it, especially when it actually works. So one of the tech side of that, the head of Judy School Tech really wanted more class sets of iPads. And by the end of the visit, the donor had already agreed to do that.
Yes, Mel, it seems to me that in many universities and schools, development office can be over here, and then the overall organisation's strategy and communication can be coming from a different place. And it seems one thing you've managed to do is to genuinely make that more integrated and holistic, so that there can be development-related messages coming from wherever rather than just from your regular communication. Is that true? And if so, what could you tell me about how you've improved that?
Yes, yeah, it is true. We have a situation where, like you say, the marketing department on one side, and they're really focusing on parents and prospective parents and that kind of thing. And, I'm communicating with alumni. And actually what I've found in schools anyway is it's almost like the development office can be an island almost, because you are the only people. I'm thinking about our 7,000 alumni most of the time, and everybody else is thinking about the pupils in the school. And when we first started doing our bursary fundraising, we'd spent about, a year or two just dropping tiny little bits about bursaries into our alumni magazine, and not any kind of ask, but just kind of mentioning that this was what we wanted to start fundraising for. And then we did our first telephone campaign, and we phoned alumni and parents, and we did, reasonably well across the board, but it was very notable that we did far better with the alumni fundraising than we did with the parental fundraising. And when we thought about it afterwards, we realised that actually the parents hadn't gone through the same kind of softening up process and preparatory bit that the alumni had, because the marketing department, I hadn't really involved them. So we made a conscious effort to then start making sure that messages about bursaries and fundraising, and the very fact that fundraising was a part of school life, was also going out in all the stuff that the marketing team were doing, things that the head was doing when she did her sort of, it was him at the time, end of term and beginning of term letters to parents. There was always just making sure there was always something about fundraising in there, and that's definitely a journey we've been on. And when we eventually had our giving day, that was probably when we worked closest with the marketing team, because of having all the different social media accounts and making sure we had the same messaging going out on all of them. So that's definitely made a big difference.
Yes, that makes sense. And there's this other theme I pick up from our conversations, Melanie, to do with thoroughness and attention to detail and having a process for doing the things that you need to do, which it seems to me helps your colleagues in the school trust that you know what you're doing, put simply. Is that true? And if so, do you have any tips for the listener for improving that efficiency?
Yeah, I think it is very true, and it's not at all glamorous when someone says, "Oh, I'd love to, be a development director," and you say, "Well, it's a weird combination of the sort of strategic and the tactical, and getting the not very exciting stuff, not glamorous stuff like spelling people's names right, responding to emails within a decent amount of time, sending thank you letters for gifts, whatever the size of the gift, in a timely manner." So I think it's just really important to get some like policies and procedures and stuff like that. And it's really not very exciting. And another thing that we previously, it was all a bit ad hoc in terms of donor recognition, whereas now we have a grid. So donors who've given between this level and this level will get a Christmas card from me. Those who've given at this level will get one from the head, or just getting that stuff in place so you're not kind of reinventing the wheel every time anything unusual happens. And I think, I suppose I'm helped in that I have got an eye for detail, and it's a very unexciting and unglamorous skill to have. But I'm a born proofreader and stuff like that. But you're representing an educational institution. You need to get things right, and just spending another 5 minutes to reread something, or getting someone with fresh eyes to reread something, just stuff like that will make all the difference, because it's so easy to let things slip by. And the last thing you want to do is to make the school look inefficient or just not on top of its game. So that's definitely something it's worth spending a bit of time doing, I'm sorry to say.
Yes, that makes absolute sense. And combined with that thoroughness, I really like the little examples of flair as well, and strategically placed flair. Listeners to my podcast might know that this concept of creating wow moments for supporters really pays you back if you can be thoughtful about it. Obviously, in the context of major gift fundraising being high touch and bespoke, there are opportunities to do that. But I really like it when you can apply a level of process to making people feel great and give them a little pleasant surprise. I think I remember at one point you showing me one of the birthday cards that you send to people who've given over a certain level and to alumni at a certain point in their life. Could you just tell me briefly about what that tactic is?
Yeah, so for a few years now, we've been sending birthday cards to alumni aged over 70 and donors who've given over a certain level. And what we have got into the habit of doing is creating a new card every year. And I liaise with the art department, and we have art scholars, and asking if there's been any particularly striking pieces of art that have been done in the last few months that might make a nice card. And we do the same actually with the Christmas card, but they're kind of set a particular project to design Christmas cards, but the birthday cards. And so usually the art department sends me a few examples, but what we've had for the last year is one of our bursary recipients who's actually just left this summer. She's also an art scholar, and she had done this amazing, it was massive, it was like 2 meters by 1 meter painting of the interior of Portsmouth Cathedral, which is just down the road from the school. We have a very close relationship with the cathedral. We have choral scholars. We have our whole school assemblies there because there's nowhere big enough in the school to have them. So we have a very close relationship and always have done. And she'd done this amazing painting of the inside. So we've made that into the birthday card for this year. So, the image means something to everyone who has, people who are in their 70s, 80s, 90s, who attended school years and years ago. It's still the same cathedral. And the very fact that the artist was a bursary recipient as well is absolutely brilliant when it comes to fundraising. So, and again, but behind that, so we've done the flair bit, and then we've also got the process. It's like beginning of every month, somebody sits down and writes loads of birthday cards, and away they go. But yeah, it's been very well received, that card. So I haven't quite worked out what we're going to send next year yet.
Yeah, one of the things I really like is that you're not content to send last year's lovely card. It's a mindset that let's keep creating these lovely things so that we've got consistency, but we're forever reinventing and freshening things up with new great things that are still consistent with the overall way we like to do things. I think it's a beautiful example.
I'll just quickly throw in that we do. So we have, relatively standard donor acknowledgement letters. And we've also got into the habit of putting a story about a bursary recipient in those. And that changes every year. I find a different person to put the story into their thank you email or thank you letter.
Yes, and it all plays back to one of the themes of this conversation, which is about having a vision of how well you want to do things. But it's not enough to just have the vision and try hard. You need a level of organisation and an organised process which enables you to execute consistently, month after month, year after year, achieving this high standard of lovely messaging, which adds up to a bigger difference for the supporter. And hopefully for many people in the school who are part of creating that effect as well. Mel, thank you so much for sharing all your ideas. I've learned so much again in this conversation. I'd like to send my best wishes to all your colleagues in the school who work so hard alongside you to make this great fundraising happen. Clearly, it's working really well and enabling more and more bursaries to be used by children in Portsmouth. So really well done. And I look forward to catching up with you very soon.
Thank you very much.
So I hope you enjoyed listening to Mel's ideas and examples. If you did, I'm pleased to tell you that we've got lots more juicy sessions coming up soon. So please remember to subscribe to the podcast today so that you never miss an episode. For a full transcript and a brief summary of the episode, go to the podcast section of our website, which is brightspotfundraising.co.uk. If you're interested in improving your skills and confidence and results in major donor fundraising, individual giving or corporate fundraising, then I'd really encourage you to check out the information about our 3 mastery programs on our website. To find out more, go to brightspotfundraising.co.uk/services and then click on the page for Major Gifts Mastery or Corporate Mastery or the Individual Giving Mastery program. And if you enjoyed the episode today, I'd be very grateful if you could take a moment to share it on with your colleagues or on social media so that we can get these ideas out to help as many people as possible. Thank you for your help. And we'd love to hear what you think about the episode. We're both on LinkedIn, and on Twitter, Mel is at Melanie Bowron and I am at Woods_Rob. Finally, thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to sharing more Bright Spot examples and ideas with you very soon.